In dem Zusammenhang haben wir übrigens auch die Vertragslaufzeit um ein Jahr erhöht bis 2023.
This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Sahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 333 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Wutzko, and today we will talk obviously about the contract extension of Jadon Sancho and the whole transfer non-saga around it. And the first friendly 6-0 against Altach is in the bag, and obviously we have to discuss a couple of new additions and maybe one probable addition, I would say. So lots to talk about for the first episode since the season awards and the first episode since the preseason started. And for that and more joins me Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing?
Hello Stefan, I'm doing like ice in the sunshine because I'm melting away.
Yeah, I'm also sitting here still covered in sweat because I was just outside having a kick around. Since this is sort of the first episode of the new season, if you will, Lars, do you maybe mind introducing yourself a little bit to the listeners so they know who you are and what you do?
I do mind, but I guess I have to now that you put me on the spot.
I can edit everything out, Lars.
Well, I'm the resident grumpster of the group, if you like. I'm also the oldest currently speaking. At 31 years of age, now that Matthias isn't with us today. I'm a freelance football writer, just as Stefan is. You can find my written work in German at the moment, so that's probably not much use to you. And yeah, I mean, really, I don't know what to say, Stefan.
Yeah, that's all right. Used to write for Bleacher Report, for example. So maybe I don't know, but
back when that wasn't mostly a social site.
Yeah. I used to cover Borussia Dortmund for ESPN FC before I moved permanently to Philadelphia from Dortmund, and now I am also a freelance football writer, writing occasionally for Fußball.news, just like you. Anyway, enough with the pre-talk, Lars. Since we both sort of follow the news in football, I'm and you even more so than me right now, I'm very glad that you could really observe the entire Jadon Sancho play out with a very keen and close eye. So yeah, how surprised were you when Michael Zorc just in a quick quip dropped the bomb on everyone on the so-called arbitrary deadline, August 10th, that, oh yeah, by the way, Jadon Sancho extended his contract last summer already till 2023, and all negotiations are off, and Manchester United didn't pay the 120 million, and so there's that, he's staying now. How surprised were you when that development unfolded?
Quite surprised about the one fact that a new contract has already been signed, 12 months ago or whatever it was. I mean, they didn't really specify all the details there. For example, I think a lot of people have kind of assumed that it was more of an option to extend the contract, which Dortmund have exercised, as opposed to Sancho signing, a new 3-year deal, if you like. But yeah, other than that, I wasn't surprised at all. I think if you followed this from a sensical point of view, if you like, and meaning not from a British or Manchester United fan point of view, there were really no indications to the contrary of Sancho staying. I mean, as you said, so-called arbitrary deadline of August 10th came closer and closer, and the evaluation of Sancho's transfer value didn't come closer and closer between the two clubs. I mean, obviously, they didn't have any kind of negotiations because that's not how Dortmund operate with their star players. If you want one of them, they set a price and you can pay that, and the player is yours if he's willing. And if you don't, and Manchester didn't even come close as far as we know, the player will say. And I know a lot of people have pointed out that in the past, similar statements have kind of come back to haunt Dortmund in a way, but also they really didn't. Because obviously people pointing to Ousmane Dembele and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, where in both cases the players went AWOL on strike, were not to be found in Dembele's case, or slouched away in training for a couple of days or weeks in the case of Aubameyang. And Dortmund still got, the transfer value they put on their player in both cases. I mean, that still was something Dortmund were quite okay with in those instances. So I don't think that's a scenario that's likely now with Sancho, just because of the rigidity of the statements of both Zorc that we've played in front of the intro, and also of Hans-Joachim Watzke, who said there's no room whatsoever for interpretation. The player is going to stay. And ultimately, I think what this entire thing tells us about, let's say, United's pursuit of Sancho is that the player wasn't completely convinced because he didn't push for a transfer, which I think he might have done if a club had come for him that is more appealing at the moment. So obviously Liverpool would be one of them, I think. Real Madrid, Barcelona. I don't know if another club would be in that stratosphere at this point, especially with him coming from Man City and not having the greatest relationship with Pep Guardiola. But I think clearly, in his estimation, given all we know, United probably aren't up on that echelon. And conversely also, I think that maybe the interest level of United was a bit overplayed by the media. I don't really see how he was like their number one target, the kind of guy that would put the team over the edge, and then they fail to even come close to a transfer evaluation that might be a bit high in their estimation, given the coronavirus situation and deflation on the transfer market. But I mean, especially now knowing, and I would assume that the club knew ahead because they might have been in negotiations or at least talks with the agent. They will have known presumably that the contract doesn't run out in 22 but in 23. I mean, I don't know how much of a discount they thought they would get for Sancho. So I mean, 120 million, which is the quoted sum. I don't know if Dortmund ever actually had to tell United exactly how much they wanted for him, but I mean, given that they had the opportunity for weeks after qualifying for the Champions League, which is enough money for a club of that size to sanction a big move that I'm really comfortable with. I think this tells us that also the other side, meaning Manchester United, probably weren't as hot on this kind of deal as people made it out to be, and especially as they miraculously are still making it out to be. I mean, every statement Dortmund have made over the last week or so, to the extent of Sancho staying in Dortmund, has been interpreted absolutely falsely and ridiculously by media personnel and fans and whatnot in the UK as like a tactical ploy in a poker game kind of way. But I mean, Dortmund aren't showing their cards right now or putting their cards on the table. They don't even have cards because Sancho is staying. I mean, there's really no debate now after all the things that have been said, and I'd be very surprised now if something happened, unless United for some reason suddenly came with an offer that absolutely blows Dortmund and Sancho away. And in that case, I think they would be okay with kind of losing face here.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be losing face, say United now offer 150, 160 million or so. But obviously, it was always clear that Dortmund, would set a deadline because they need to find a replacement. And obviously, replacing Jadon Sancho will not be so easy. Friend of the show, Adam Dorowski, likes to list the players, including the pre-assist or second assist, or however you want to call it, the pass before the assist. And in all competitions, Jadon Sancho is leading this by a mile over everyone else. He scored 20 goals and has 20 assists and 15 pre-assists, and that sort of combines to 55 points, as he writes, and Julian Brandt would be the second one with 36. So I assume a healthy Royce probably would have been somewhere up there where Jadon Sancho is, but just looking at the numbers and the output, you see that Jadon Sancho has a value for Dortmund that they really would struggle to replace in so many ways. And last season we have said time and time again that Jadon Sancho, even with this output, there is room for improvement. Sometimes he doesn't look like he's participating, and you talked about maybe the reluctance of Manchester United to pull the trigger yet, and I can actually understand that, because there are a couple of games where Jadon Sancho really didn't defend well and cover himself in glory. I'm thinking, for example, about the away game against Bayern Munich, where he was subbed off very early. And if you spend that kind of money for a player, the expectations, especially I guess at Manchester United, are sky high. So you really want to make sure you have a player that is ready for that sort of role. And I'm not entirely sure Jadon Sancho is 100% there yet. I feel like another season at Dortmund might actually help him, or may not. I don't know for sure. But it's a very interesting transfer. And obviously there's also no guarantee for Manchester United if they are still interested next season that they will get him, because I think that other clubs like Real Madrid or Barcelona will have interest as well, and will probably come up with more money and obviously have more allure at the same time. It's also not guaranteed that Manchester United, for example, re-qualify for the Champions League via the Premier League or so, because that's a bit more competitive than other leagues. You are sure that and certain that Real Madrid and Barcelona will play Champions League every year unless something completely out of the order happens. But as we've seen with the coronavirus and how football has reacted, I feel like it suits the favorites even more so. So there's even less of a chance something crazy happens, unless, of course, a whole squad or so gets infected. But back to topic. Yeah, it's for Dortmund, obviously, just very great. I think Dortmund fans were elated to learn that Jadon Sancho will stay, and that he has another year on his contract, meaning that you can be very comfortable in believing and accepting that he will play this year. And obviously, it's not that unimportant for other players that came in, like Jude Bellingham, to have someone there like Jadon Sancho. And I might just play it now, because after the friendly, Jadon Sancho talked about being a bit of a leader and stuff like that. So let's just have a quick listen to what he said after the game, courtesy of Borussia Dortmund's press officer.
Jadon, you and the boys seem to have fun out there the first 45 minutes.
Yeah, I like playing with these lot. It's a special bunch, and we got some special young players coming up, and I'm really happy to be sharing a picture with them and guide them, because once I was in their shoes and I know how it is playing with the seniors, and I'm just happy for them.
You talk like a veteran player, and you're 20 years old, so you feel like a leader already?
Yeah, obviously I joined at 17 years old, so some of the lads are 17 themselves, so I've been there, done that, and I can just try and guide them on what's good and what's not good, and hopefully motivate them as well.
Switching over to Erling, how did it feel? First 45 minutes, you continue where you left off in the last season, scoring 2 goals.
Yeah, it was hard first of all, but nice to get the minutes. Boys show great character. Sancho still looking sharp, so yeah, it was nice to get the minutes.
And Haaland sharp?
Could have been better, but it was okay.
Could have been better, you know. We always want more. Should have been 5 or 6 now. We're not satisfied with the 3-0.
But still, you know, the boys showed great character, you know. And
We showed 100%, and you know, we still got more to improve.
What was worse, the assist you tried to give to Manu or his right foot?
It's got to be his right foot. You know, I'm sure in training we're gonna definitely get him in the shooting practice because it's not acceptable. You know. No, I'm joking. He's a good lad. He's a good lad. You know, sometimes you miss these chances, but this is how you come back and finish them next time.
Come back stronger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, anyway, they were joking around a little bit at the end. So, Lars, first of all, maybe how excited are you about the prospect of actually having Jadon Sancho and Erling Haaland play together for a full season?
Quite excited, obviously. I mean, I'm still kind of in awe of actually hearing Jadon Sancho's voice. I can't remember when I last heard it, to be honest. I mean, I don't think he's ever done like too many TV interviews after games or whatever. So that was a bit of a shock almost to the system, if you like, that British accent coming out of the speakers. But yeah, I mean, 2 of the best, let's say 10, whatever, best players under 20 in the world. I mean, there's no debate that that's a very exciting prospect. Especially given how they've already linked up with Haaland coming in January pretty late in terms of not being able to train the first few days with a knee injury, and obviously a full summer ahead of a fixture congestion in the first half of the season. So I'm sure they are going to have to rotate more than they did before, so they will probably pick their spots a bit where they show their full potential going forward in terms of personnel. But certainly for the bigger games, having 2 of the best young players in the world combined, that's a great prospect.
Yeah, definitely. And not only that, I mean, Jadon Sancho also talked a little bit about the input of Jude Bellingham. I think he's very excited about him and his playing style. You could see him link up well with the others in the first 45 minutes already. I was quite impressed, even though it's just against some Austrian Bundesliga team. And, it's not the bar for Dortmund. I think someone tweeted that you can probably glean more from an 11 versus 11 training session among just Dortmund players than that sort of friendly. But nevertheless, I do think that it's good for Jadon Sancho to feel like he has a role and can gain responsibilities. So his focus isn't 100% on himself and his own career, but I think having a role to play throughout the season for other players also helps him grow. So that is something I'm looking forward to. And from the couple of sentences you could hear, I think he's ready to take on that responsibility. And when the excitement is there, it's very good. And I mean, it's kind of nice to have Jadon Sancho sort of as an ambassador. If you look at Jude Bellingham and how Dortmund managed to lure him to the Westfalenstadion, and knowing that Sancho's ascent played a big influence in that decision. It's for Dortmund sort of their best business model to build the reputation over almost a decade now that they can form elite talent to star players, and that has started under Jürgen Klopp, I would say, and is continuing to this day thanks to the great work of Michael Zorc. Obviously, not every talent that Dortmund have signed and spent money on has landed 100%, but that hasn't discouraged young players, at the age of 16, 17, 18, 19 to join Dortmund, even though they had interests of bigger and better clubs, I would say. So that's very exciting, and it's good to know that Jadon Sancho is paving the way also for English players, because while I feel like the talent coming out of Germany have dried up a little. You see a lot of talent right now coming out of the UK, and so it's very helpful for the Black and Yellows to have that pipeline somewhat open already. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but I'm certainly excited.
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's a bit easy to say just because there's one English player now, every talent from, Premier League ranks, or in the case of Bellingham, a championship side in Birmingham, wants to come to Dortmund. I mean, there's certainly an element of that, I suppose. I mean, Bellingham himself said that seeing Sancho make the steps he's trying to make has obviously been a help for him, but I think, as I said, it's a bit too narrow focused to just point to the nationality. I think overall having a number of players over a consistent amount of time, as you said, consistently make that transition from talent to star, if you like. I mean, that's basically what they're looking for, right? That's certainly something that gives Dortmund a special pull, and it's something also that everybody's had kind of mentioned. I mean, the Haalands and the Sanchos and the Bellinghams, whenever they sign for Dortmund, they mention two things, and that's the stadium and the fans and the special atmosphere, which is certainly something that not a lot of clubs can offer, and also secondly the recent history with young talented players. I mean, it really speaks for itself. I think Michael Zorc typically says in negotiations, I only have to point out our recent lineups, because there's always a teenager there in an important role, or guys making the next steps. I mean, last season we've already mentioned how great Sancho was, but in the winter then came Erling Haaland, and also Gio Reyna made the first hugely important steps, and Matteo Murray got playing time towards the end of the season. So as you said, the pipeline is always open, and it's a great selling point for Dortmund. Obviously, that kind of strategy also has some tripwires, if you like. I mean, you have a lot of turnover. Not a lot of players consider Dortmund, more than a great stepping stone, I would say. So I don't know if it's like the absolute best strategy to maximize your winning potential year in, year out. If you look at the year in an isolated instant, if you like, but it's certainly a great long-term strategy that makes Dortmund consistently exciting, which is also something that we as fans of the game and ultimately fans of Dortmund can also appreciate. I mean, I don't know if that I would trade that kind of style of being with like one title winning season and then 2 seasons of chasing glory with like an aging squad that kind of is over the hill after winning the title. So I don't know if that's a way that I would prefer. So it's certainly nice to see Dortmund still having that pull all the time.
The tripwire is definitely inconsistency overall, because younger players tend to have form go up and down, but I feel like older players experiencing these swings throughout the season as well. Maybe not as many mistakes here and there, but you can have the most experienced team and squad and they will still make amateurish errors, because that's just the nature of the game. Maybe let's go back a little bit to that friendly, because I think the first goal was scored sort of in the build-up by two 17-year-olds and one 20-year-olds. Is Bellingham with the interception, the pass to Haaland, and he passes over to Reinier, who then nutmegs the keeper, and that sort of gives you a little bit of a taste of what's to come this season. Now, what we have seen during the friendlies, and the journalists that traveled to Switzerland, to Bad Ragaz, to the training camp, they are all saying that all or most of the training form are with the back four. I think one of the turning points last season was when Dortmund switched to a back three from a back four. now I feel like I hear the explanation that Favre wants to go back to a back four because of the lack of Achraf Hakimi. Do you think that's a valid explanation? Do you think there's more behind it? And do you think we will actually see Dortmund go into the season trying to play that back four consistently? Or do you think there will be more of a switch around and that Favre is going, to have more tactical flexibility to apply if needed? What do you think is in the mind of the coach from as far as you are away?
I think the flexibility argument makes the most sense. I don't think that they are shifting back to a back four. I don't think personnel-wise that makes the most sense, for week in, week out, because, they are left backs, or let's say the left back and Nico Schulz, because he's kind of not really anything at this point. So Guerrero, he's better served in that more advanced role as a wingback. The same, I think, can definitely be said about Matteo Murray. Presumably also about Thomas Meunier. I mean, he himself described himself as like an attacking player who now plays fullback because early on in his career, his team needed a fullback and he was one of the youngest players and still able to run quite a bit. I mean, that's kind of what happens on, in Sunday league football, if you like, all the time. The young guy has to play fullback because that's a position with intensive running, and kind of stuck for Meunier, but he still has the mentality of an attacking player by his own admission. So, I mean, definitely don't see him, and he doesn't see himself either in like a Piszczek-like role where he can play right-sided center half in a back three. So I think from personnel, it makes more sense to stick with the back three in most cases, not all cases. But to me, the biggest problem in both instances, or in both tactical formations or whatever, is the lack of center back talent at this point. I mean, they have three out and out first team center halves in Hummels, Akanji, and Zagadou. Zagadou is out injured right now. Hummels has only come back. Akanji has his struggles with hip problems over the last 18 months or so, and certainly also struggling with form from time to time. And, once one of them is missing, you're already looking at Piszczek, who might be a full-time center back in a back three, but is not a learned center back. And Emre Can, who might be too important in midfield as a leader kind of guy, and is also not a learned center back, even though everybody was kind of saying that that's the position he was going to play. And part of the reason why he signed for Dortmund in the first place, because it's also probably the only position where he could, fit into the starting 11 for the German national team on a consistent basis, which is something that he cares about quite a bit. So I've always said, and I mean, we are going to shortly be talking about a potential addition at the top of midfield, or kind of an attacking role. I've always kind of said that, in my opinion, especially if they had sold Sancho, signing a decent right-sided centre half would have been right there atop the list of priorities if I were to write it down. So I still think that, there's a potential weakness that, especially in this first half of the season, which is going to be Englische Woche after Englische Woche, might come back to bite them in the behind.
Yeah, I fear that too, especially considering how injury prone the center backs right now are. I mean, Zagadou just came back from an injury, if I'm not completely wrong. Didn't he feature in the last game or so against Hoffenheim or so? So yeah, that's far from ideal. You want obviously these players to have a full preseason, because otherwise it's going to be really tough going into that sort of schedule. If you don't have the physical stamina that you need for the season that's ahead of us. So, Zagadou being out for the remainder of the preseason, and then obviously with Borussia Dortmund, you never know how long that actually means right now. They're saying they don't expect him to be out for too long, but it's a knee injury. These can always be very complicated, and it's quite disappointing. So I don't think we've discussed the addition of Meunier too much yet. What are your thoughts as him as a right back coming into the squad? How do you see him and the style of Dortmund maybe changing with him playing in the position that Hakimi filled before, or something similar? Because it's obviously not going to be like for like in the playing style.
Yeah, I think my most of my exposure is actually not from Paris, but from the Belgian national team. And I always find that international football is a bit different and hard to sometimes gain too much from an analysis point of view. I will say that he's saying all the right things off the pitch and seems like a great addition to the locker room. Also in terms of his age profile, he's among the older players, has experienced a lot of ups and downs.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you, because I've read on Twitter people being very upset that he was happy about PSG progressing to the semi-final. Very upset.
Yeah, idiots, all of them. I mean, he shared the locker room with those guys for how long? 4 or 5 years. I mean, he can be happy about that, and he also committed the cardinal sin recently of saying Schalke are still a good club. I mean, I also don't have a problem with that. But yeah, as I said, he offers an experience and leadership kind of profile to the locker room, which Dortmund can always need or make good use of, especially considering Marco Reus basically has to be considered a bonus whenever he's ready to play and be a full member of the team at this point. And Piszczek is finishing his career this season, so there's certainly a bit of a vacuum to be filled over the next let's say year and a half or whatever. So I think Meunier is the kind of person to fit that role. I just don't really know yet how he fits into this team from a footballing perspective. I mean, he. As I said before, he considers himself an attacking player playing fullback. So do we have another Hakimi situation where defense is optional for the fullback, which is a problem? I think he's very likely to be a better decision maker defensively than Hakimi, which isn't hard, but I mean,
I feel like Hakimi, I am that too.
Hakimi offered so much going forward. I mean, we've talked about it when it was announced that he wasn't going to stay at Dortmund, that he's kind of underrated, which is hard to believe considering the goal contributions he had for a somewhat defensive player anyway. So yeah, I don't have enough reference points seeing Meunier in this team, but I mean, I'm willing to believe that they know what they're doing on the transfer market, because more often than not they do. And the good thing is also there's always still Matteo Morey, who will get more minutes than last season, I'm sure.
Yeah, Morey looked very positive in playing time that he got, I would say. And yeah, Hakimi, he scored, I think, 9 goals and had 10 assists and 6 pre-assists, if you will. So he was the number 3 in the Adam Dorowski table with 25 points, same amount of contributions as Torgan Hazard, who had 7 goals, 14 assists and 3 pre-assists. So yeah, obviously the lack of scoring output from Hakimi will be felt, because Meunier doesn't do that quite the same way. So yeah, I'm also very intrigued to see how he will fit in. I really do hope that he adds some more defensive solidity, because otherwise, it's going to be a setback, I guess, on the right side for Dortmund if they don't get that. Yeah, but I'm like you. I'm also not entirely sure how the balance will look like with him on a team and where Favre will utilize him. And obviously, something you can't say yet, and that is obviously always very important with the fullback, is the synergy with the players around him. You know, how well is he when it comes to combining in tight spaces, because that's what Dortmund do really well usually, and like to do, that they like to overload the space sort of right next to the opposition box, that they have a little triangle with 3 or 4 players and just pass the ball around before they try to find the way in the box. And that's just something that has been consistent over the seasons from Klopp to Tuchel to I think Stöger not so much, but certainly Bosch and Favre as well. So that's just an area of the pitch where Dortmund players like to concentrate and to focus, and the right back does play a big role. So if he's good at passing the ball around quickly, I think that alone will be a big factor. So I'm looking forward to see how well he can build the synergy with his teammates. And automatism's always important, and how quickly he learns which runs to make and which spaces to occupy. I think, especially for fullbacks in Dortmund, you sort of need to learn a little bit just, based on instinct, but also based on routine, where exactly you need to be. And I'm also excited to see how well he can cross, because I think that's something he might do a little better than Hakimi. At least the regular cross. I don't know how well his cutback into the boxes, which is obviously also a very important tool in the toolbox that Dortmund used to attack. So very intrigued. And of course, the other signing is Jude Bellingham, who only just turned 17, and I think Dortmund wired about 23 million as a base fee for him to Birmingham City. And in the first friendly, you could immediately see that there is merit to this transfer. Obviously, it would be a bit too early to say that he is one of the best talents ever, but I was certainly impressed by what I saw. I thought he was very very clever on the field in his behavior. Reading passes, and the way he turns on the ball is very elegant. It reminded me a bit of Ilkay Gündoğan, who is very good with the 180 on the ball turn. That's something that I'm always looking forward to, because I think when you play as a central player, you sort of need to reset the angle very quickly. Bastian Schweinsteiger, for example, did that always very well. By just turning sort of with and around the ball to just completely reset the angle and everyone else around himself. So Jude Bellingham can do that too. I think in the first couple of minutes of the game, he had a couple of safety passes, but after that, there were a couple of good through balls played by him. So, the little showcase we saw against a very inferior side, we have to say, looked very positive. Lars, your first takeaways, how very insignificant they may be in the end, and considering the bigger picture, but nevertheless, first impressions, I'd like to hear them.
Yeah, I think a commanding presence in midfield, especially considering it's his first game in a new environment after maybe a week of team training. I mean, there were travel times in there and corona tests and whatnot. So I think we kind of have to throw the age thing a bit out of the window, if you like, because he's been a full-time starter in a, obviously from a footballing perspective, not a great league, the English Championship, but it's a very competitive division nonetheless, with a lot of games, because there's 24 teams and he's played 40 pro games of football or whatever, or 42, including cup competitions or something along those lines. And that's not
Transfermarkt says 44 appearances.
Yeah, that's not normal for a just turned 17 player. I mean, the natural comparison which we've made earlier is Jadon Sancho, because he also came over from England, but Sancho came over from Man City. I don't know if that was reserves or under 18 or whatever that would be called in
it just
in
Manchester
Britain.
Academy, I think, is like overarching term.
Whatever. So I mean, Sancho and Bellingham, they don't compare whatsoever. Obviously, they also don't compare in that regard in terms of the transfer fee, because Sancho cost Dortmund something along the lines of 8 million, and it's 3 times the amount for Bellingham, which, from what little we've seen so far, and also from hearing people talk about him, not only, Michael Zorc, who has a vested interest in the transfer seeming like shrewd business, but also teammates and guys who watched the training sessions live and whatnot. Everybody is really impressed with him. And Favre, who's known to wax poetic about players outside of Gio Reyna,
I was just going to say,
is also very complimentary of Bellingham. And just like Meunier, the first impression given off the field is almost more impressive to me than what's happening on the pitch, just because it's so early in preseason. But Bellingham also has a presence about him off the field. He speaks very intelligently for a 17-year-old who probably knew very early on that he was going to have a pro football career. I mean, not to put them all down, but a lot of young players, they wouldn't be able to articulate themselves quite as impressively as Bellingham has so far, and I'm certain that's going to remain the case, just because he seems like a bright boy. So if nothing else, Dortmund have added 2 really good characters from what we can tell, and that's also something that we shouldn't discount as like a secondary objective. I think whenever you try to build a team, you have to take into account that you are adding characters to a dressing room, and the mixture seems better for having Bellingham and Meunier. So that's something they also should get some kudos for.
Yeah, definitely. And we can hear Bellingham speak after the game, again, courtesy of Borussia Dortmund's press officer.
Jude, first 45 minutes in black and yellow, how did it feel for you?
I loved every minute of it. It was great to familiarise myself with the boys and finally have some competition in black and yellow. So I'm buzzing, and obviously got some goals, had some fun, and really enjoyed it.
And you seem pretty comfortable on the pitch already.
To be fair, I think I'm confident in my own ability, but the boys are so good that it made it easy for me. They were outstanding at times, and we played some really good stuff, even though it's our first game back. So I'm really happy to be a part of this team, really.
How important is it, 17 years old, a new club, a new league, and everything, new teammates, to get some good moments, like getting the ball and assisting on the first, assisting on the third goal?
Yeah, I think obviously that's the kind of player that I am, and as soon as I can get into that groove of making goals, making chances, making tackles, doing everything right, then I can be more confident when the season comes round, and hopefully I can contribute then as well. But for now, just trying to get myself to the level that I need to get to.
Yeah, that back heel to Haaland definitely was kind of sweet, wasn't it? Overall, the build-up was very nice in that goal. Bellingham obviously can play in the number 6, number 8, and I assume also number 10 position. And I think that's a very good transition to my next sort of subject or topic, because you just said Marco Reus. You have to consider him right now more as a bonus than anything else. I think Kicker had the statistic that since he joined Dortmund, he played 57% of all possible games, which is sadly not a lot, and really highlights how injury prone he has been over the years. And today I think Bild reported that he might undergo surgery because whatever he has on his abductors and the tendon or so is still painful for him. So he was back in training, I think, at the end of the season, and he was in pain whenever he tried to shoot the ball. I guess that's also when the injury happened in February. So considering that Lucien Favre may play a 4-2-3-1 system, that may mean that Dortmund have a actual number 10 position, and there are a lot of players that would be suitable for that position. So Lars, who wins the number 10 sweepstakes in that particular scenario right now? Because we see Lucien Favre praise obviously Gio Reyna in really high tones, and Jude Bellingham obviously is qualified for that position, but we have also a guy named Julian Brandt running around in this team. So how are you going to set this up?
Well, if it's a 4-2-3-1, I don't think Bellingham is really a candidate because he's probably the best option as the second central midfielder next to Jan or Witzel, presumably, so a somewhat more defensive-minded strategic player. Bellingham is a ball carrier, makes a lot of sense in that aspect, I think. I think, generally speaking, Bellingham is most likely to play a bit deeper than a 10 in most cases. So it would probably be about Brandt versus Reina, and I mean, for all the praise Reina gets, deservedly so, from Favre for his development and always showing positive signs whenever he's on the pitch, I think this would very, very much be Brandt's job to lose because of his experience, because of his quality, which is still very much higher than Gio Reyna's, and also because Favre has shown a willingness to consider Reina like a super sub, which was the case for basically the entire second half of the season until the coronavirus situation unfolded, because he, for the first 11 or 12 games of his pro career, he came off the bench and had a nice impact in a few games. Remember his goal against Bremen, remember his assist versus PSG in the first leg, so I think there's enough time for Reina to become more than, the 12th man, if you like, on offense. And I also think having Reina on the bench has the added benefit of him being able to play multiple positions, whereas Brandt is really a 10 or a 10 playing in number 8.
All right, so I'm very intrigued with this scenario because we have a lot of candidates for that position, and we also need to have, because I assume the rotation machine needs to switch on sooner rather than later, considering the schedule. So I don't think we have time to discuss the ins and outs of the schedule and whether it favors Dortmund or disfavors Dortmund. But I have one more subject to talk about, and that obviously is the number 9, because if we think back to the last members assembly or one last year where Joachim Watzke sort of conceded, that Dortmund made a mistake by not signing another number 9, and then they sold Akasa and signed Haaland, but it's not like that Dortmund necessarily have 2 number 9s. I mean, we have discussed the subject, and we know that Dortmund right now do not have the funds to have another number 9. Do you think that Torgan Hazard will be the candidate to play that role more often in the wake of Erling Haaland? Because I don't see him play every game this season. I think you need to give him rests here and there as well. Or do you think that this problem may solve itself a little bit, not entirely obviously, by the addition of Yusufa Moukoko when he turns 16 in November, that Dortmund actually have another striker option that's a real number 9? Because to me, Torgan Hazard is many things, but he's not a true number 9 in Erling Haaland's sense.
Well, neither is Moukoko, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, Hans-Joachim Watzke has been adamant, and everybody who's spoken about Moukoko has been adamant that he is considered a full-time member of the first team squad. And if rules were permitting, Moukoko would already be playing in these friendlies, and he would certainly be an option to come off the bench, presumably in the first actual games of the season. I mean, there's really no debating that they think he's ready, and from what I've seen, which is obviously quite little, especially at the pro level, because it's only like whatever Dortmund have put up on social media or YouTube or whatever from training days. I mean, there's nothing to suggest to me that he doesn't make the step up relatively easily or even immediately. I mean, I would certainly assume, and that's certainly also what they are talking about, that Moukoko is going to probably have his debut on November 21st if the schedule permits it. I mean, I think he is going to be 16 on the Friday of like the 14th or whatever match day in November. So if Dortmund have a game on Saturday, he could play then. And honestly, it's probably best to get that out of the way, because we all know that as soon as he has his first pro appearance, all the talk about him being actually older than they say he is, and all the connotations that I don't like talking about and that I don't think are fair towards the kid himself, that will all come up again. So it would be serving Dortmund best, I think, just to get it out of the way and have him play the first time, and by the time he's played the second, third and fourth time, I think that entire discussion will have died down, and all will be able to concentrate on what he does best, and that is playing football at an extremely high level for a 15-year-old kid.
Yeah, certainly a lot of great things to look forward to next season or this season. And there might be even more to look forward to, maybe because Dortmund are interested and apparently close on signing Reinier or Reinier Jesus or whatever from from Real Madrid, who used to play for Flamengo in the Brazilian Serie A, and won the Copa Libertadores recently. He could join Dortmund maybe on a 2-year deal like Hakimi did. Lars, I know little to nothing about this player other than that he plays centrally as an attacking midfielder and as a false nine here and there. If you have anything to say about him further than I, please go ahead.
Yeah, I've only seen him obviously in like a couple of games in the Copa Libertadores. I'm not even sure how many minutes he got there.
I should add that he's 18 years old for context.
Yeah, and he was 17 at the time. I've talked to a couple of people in the last few days because there were some rumblings behind the scenes already. And he's been described to me as purely playing type, not quality type. Someone somewhat akin to Kai Havertz. So, an attacking midfielder with a decent presence, not one of those, let's say, typically flimsy, flary attacking players from Brazil. So there's people are saying anyway that he might be able to make the transition to Europe, which in the last few years more Brazilian talents than not have kind of failed to make, especially attacking talents. I think Brazil kind of somewhat absurdly for someone our age, Stefan, has turned into more of a factory for like defensive players and defensive midfielders and whatnot. But I don't really recall too many great Brazilian attacking talents making the switch to Europe since maybe Neymar. I mean, maybe I'm talking complete shit right now, but I don't remember too many. Like Vinicius Junior or Rodrigo of Real Madrid, they both haven't impressed me too much so far. And people are saying that Reinier or whatever might be a bit more suited at this early point in his career to play in Europe. And the most interesting aspect probably is not only do Dortmund have a great relationship with Real Madrid, so they, even if it's a 1-year loan deal, you wouldn't have to rule out that turning into something more, especially if, as we talked about earlier, Real might be interested in Jadon Sancho in 2021. Dortmund were also very much interested in, from what I understand, considered themselves the second favorites to Real when he signed from Flamengo in December or January for 30 million euros, which is obviously a lot for a player from Brazil making the step to Europe. And I think Dortmund are probably quite happy not having made that deal, since otherwise they wouldn't have been able to sign Erling Haaland, which, no matter how great Reinier might be, I think it's pretty safe to say that Haaland is probably a better talent, even though I don't know too much about Reinier. So it makes sense that they've kind of made this thing happen. If it's going to happen, I think all German media are reporting that it's probably going to happen. So, I mean, the one thing that a lot of people are saying is that he's kind of similar to Reinier in terms of some of his profile, which kind of contradicts the Havertz comparison, in my opinion, because Reinier and Havertz aren't really alike, in my opinion. But I think it's not too bad having two players of Reinier's ilk, because A, he's a great talent, and B, it would make Lucien Favre the happiest man on earth.
Yeah, that's very true, and also it's never bad to have a Brazilian in your team. I feel like that alone heightens the chances to win the championship. I don't know, might be just something that Giovanni Alba once said, but no. To be honest, I'm excited to see how it pans out. I mean, you've already teased it a little bit that if and when Dortmund sell Jadon Sancho, that you might be looking for maybe a switcheroo of some kind, that if you sell it to one of the elite clubs, that they might have another talent or established players or whoever to guide the other way, just to sweeten the deal a little. I think that's something Dortmund might be looking into here and there, because they will need to replace Sancho in one way or another. So
Yeah, on that note, at one point early in the season, from what I gather, Dortmund were kind of interested in if a deal with United was to be loaning out Mason Greenwood, which obviously, now that he's had his breakthrough in the Premier League and Europa League, that seems like another kind of situation where Dortmund identified young talent very well. So it's certainly a scenario that I think would make sense from Dortmund's perspective, especially given that the coronavirus situation, even for a club the size of Real Madrid, will not be completely in the rear view mirror in 21.
No, that's very true. I mean, the knock-on and after effects from this pandemic will be felt. It won't just magically flip the switch in like a couple of months and everything will be gone and back to normal, because I don't think this virus will just magically go away like certain presidents like to claim, and I also don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, and hence we'll be probably living with this and the financial consequences of that, especially in the footballing world, but anywhere else as well. So I don't think Dortmund will maybe get 120 million asking price, but we'll see. It also depends a little bit on the kind of season that Sancho will have, because if he improves even more, which is not out of the realm obviously for a 20-year-old, that can tack on a couple millions here and there. But anyway, Lars, I think that's a very good point to leave it here. So please tell our listeners how to get in touch with you if they want on the interwebs.
They can just follow me on Twitter at Lars Pollmann.
Very well, and they can follow me at Stefan Butzko if you want to get in touch with the Yellowwallpod. Do that also on Twitter or Facebook at Yellowwallpod. If you want to read our written content, go to theyellowwall.net, and to subscribe, please use iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or subscribe to our channel on YouTube. If you want to contribute financially or sponsor an episode for $10 a pop and get a shout out, go to patreon.com/theyellowwall for more information. That is all for us for this week. We will have maybe a Q&A part next week. I know, we'll see. Anywho, as always, thank you for listening, and until next time.